Set in Paris, France, the story focuses on a contract killer, let's call him James, who is on a mission to assassinate a target said to be staying in a hotel room across from the building where he's hiding. James has been waiting for 5 days, deliberately renting a room in the empty building just to observe his target from afar. James is a highly meticulous, organized, coordinated, and disciplined professional hitman. His patience is proven by the fact that the target still shows no signs of appearing even now. James wears a watch that measures his heart rate, which helps him monitor his physical condition, something that greatly affects his success in executions. Over his decades as a contract killer, James has never once been caught or made a mistake. None of his missions have ever been traced by the police. Imagine sitting still for 24 hours straight, 5 days in a row, just waiting for the target to arrive. This kind of job isn't for someone who gets bored easily. It requires extraordinary patience, a trait only certain people possess. James himself claims he isn't special or extraordinary, just different in terms of focus, commitment, and sheer determination. Occasionally, James does yoga stretches to loosen his body. Sometimes, he listens to music to ward off boredom, because after all, he's still human. There are moments when he succumbs to fatigue and hunger, forcing him to go out and buy food himself. He intentionally dresses like a German tourist, because based on his research, Parisians rarely interact with German tourists, a detail that helps maintain his disguise. From this, it's clear James has planned everything down to the smallest detail. Even for minor things like brushing his teeth or washing his face, James sprays the sink with a neutralizing agent to erase his DNA traces, making it harder for authorities to identify him. On the 5th night, James decides to sleep briefly in a normal position, sensing the target won't appear tonight. But when he wakes up, he's immediately startled to see the target's room being cleaned by hotel staff, a sign that the target will arrive soon. After preparing his sniper rifle, a woman who appears to be an escort enters the room, likely there to entertain the target. James uses this delay to clean his scope lens and plays music to keep his mind calm. Finally, the target arrives and enters the room. When James lines up his shot, he hesitates to pull the trigger. After realizing his heart rate is at 100 BPM, he needs extra time to lower it to exactly 60 BPM to ensure his bullet's trajectory isn't thrown off. In the final moments before execution, James repeats affirmations, positive words in his mind, to reinforce his focus on the mission. Stick to the plan. No improvisation. Trust no one. Never surrender an advantage. Never fight unless paid. Eliminate empathy. Empathy is weakness. Weakness is vulnerability. Once his heart rate hits exactly 60, James pulls the trigger, just as the woman makes a sudden movement. For the first time ever, James fails his mission. He immediately packs his belongings and flees on his Vespa before the target's side realizes his presence. After 5 long days of waiting, James must accept the fact that even his vast experience isn't a guarantee of success. Panic and tension begin to show as he speeds away on his Vespa, avoiding police cars. Once he reaches a safe location, he methodically erases evidence, abandoning the Vespa, throwing his helmet into a river, shaving off his beard and mustache, and tossing his gun into a public trash bin. Rather than fixing his failure, James chooses to play it safe and leave Paris. His panic resurfaces when he faces airport security and sniffer dogs scrutinizing passengers, forcing him to retreat to a restroom to wash his face and calm down. Shortly after, his agency contacts him, warning that the client who hired them will be furious about the failed mission. They offer him a chance to correct his mistake by killing the target no matter what. But James, unwilling to take risks, insists on leaving Paris for his own safety. Throughout his journey, James remains hyper-vigilant, suspecting a well-dressed, bespectacled passenger might be a threat, whether from the client, his agency, or the target's side. To stay safe, he decides to make a stopover in another country and checks into a hotel until the next morning. Even inside the hotel, James remains wary of potential threats, leading him to set up a self-security protocol, placing a glass and a lid in front of the door and sleeping in a seated position with a knife beside him. The next morning, feeling secure, James flies to his hometown, America, specifically a city called Santo Domingo, the capital of the Dominican Republic. Upon landing, he still has a long journey from the airport to his private residence. which is well hidden and far from urban areas. When he arrives at the entrance gate, he finds boot prints and scattered cigarette butts, clear signs that strangers have trespassed onto his property. He immediately grabs a pistol and sneaks into his own house. To his shock, the house is in complete disarray, with bloodstains everywhere. He isn't worried about the house or possessions. His concern is his beloved wife, who lives here alone. After contacting the authorities, he learns she is now in the ICU after being attacked by unknown assailants. At the hospital, James is heartbroken to see his wife's battered face, covered in stitches and severe bruises. His brother-in-law, who happens to be there, describes the attackers. Two people, a man and a woman, who arrived in a green taxi with a yellow logo. They threatened to do worse if they caught her lying. After speaking with his brother-in-law, James approaches his now conscious wife. It seems she already knows his true profession and chose to protect his identity, enduring the brutal beating out of love and loyalty. Enraged by what happened to his wife, James digs up the backyard to retrieve his work gear, determined to hunt down the two attackers and make them pay. Based on his brother-in-law's description of the taxi, James searches the city until he finds the matching cab. He follows one driver to locate the taxi company's headquarters. Once inside, he investigates the driver who transported the attackers on the day of the incident. After obtaining the driver's name and face, James disguises himself as a passenger to confront him directly. Armed with a pistol and a cold expression, James forces the driver to a secluded area and demands details about the two assailants. The driver describes the woman as thin and the man as tall, muscular, and fierce-looking. With the information secured, James reluctantly kills the driver to eliminate a witness.
I'll walk back.
From the driver's account, James concludes the two attackers are likely professional killers. He decides to fly to New Orleans, where his agency is based. Upon arrival, he rents a van as his primary vehicle and heads to his private storage unit, where he keeps all his essentials: fake IDs, clothes, weapons, and even fake license plates to deceive the police. Uncertain of his exact plan, James purchases janitorial supplies like a large trash bin, eventually revealing his intent to disguise himself as a cleaner to infiltrate his agency's building. Using a courier as cover, he pretends to collect trash. Once the courier leaves and the area is quiet, James breaches the agency's private office. The agency, which takes contracts from clients and assigns jobs to James, turns out to be run by a lawyer who facilitates hits for elite clients. Suspecting the lawyer's involvement in his wife's attack, James interrogates him at gunpoint. Using a nail gun, he shoots 3 nails into the lawyer's chest. But the man remains stubborn until his dying breath. James then turns to the lawyer's assistant, who proves more cooperative, offering complete data on the two attackers, all neatly stored in his personal home. Here, James faces an internal conflict when the assistant begs for mercy. The assistant knows James will kill him, but asks for a death that looks like an accident so his life insurance can support his school-aged children. James's principles clash with his conscience. No pity. Pity is weakness. Weakness is vulnerability. Yet, in the end, he grants the assistant's request, letting him lead the way to his home to retrieve the files before breaking his neck near a staircase to stage an accidental death. With the information secured, James disposes of the lawyer's body by traveling to another city via boat, dropping evidence into the sea, and dumping the corpse under a rural bridge, making it nearly impossible for police to solve the case. Next, James heads to Florida, where the male attacker lives. Upon arrival, he confirms the man matches the taxi driver's description: tall, muscular, and fierce-looking, with a pit bull as a pet. James waits patiently for the right moment, striking late at night when the man is alone and likely asleep. Armed with a pistol, James enters quietly, but the plan goes awry when the man ambushes him from behind, leading to a brutal fight. Though outmatched in strength and size, James's tactics and intelligence give him the upper hand, leaving his opponent severely wounded. Yet the man keeps getting back up.
Is that the Dominican Republican?
While James hides in a room, the man's pit bull attacks, forcing James to sprint outside, lock the gate, and throw a Molotov cocktail to destroy the crime scene. With the man dealt with, James travels to New York to confront the second attacker, the thin woman who participated in his wife's assault. Despite her frail appearance, she's a seasoned hitman with a notorious reputation in the criminal underworld. Unfazed, James tracks her to a restaurant where she's dining alone. The moment he sits at her table with a gun pointed at her, the woman freezes. She quickly deduces he's here for revenge and, accepting her fate, orders the most expensive drink as a final reward. She claims innocence, insisting she never laid a hand on James's wife. All injuries were inflicted by the male attacker, who favored brutal methods. James remains silent, unmoved. He forces her outside to a secluded spot. When she slips and begs for help, he remembers his creed. Stay focused on the mission. Trust no one. He shoots her in the head, mid-plea. A seemingly cruel act, but the right call, as her left hand was already gripping a hidden knife. With both attackers dead, James's final target is the client who started it all. A wealthy businessman embroiled in a rivalry with the man James originally failed to kill. The client hired James to eliminate his competitor, a common practice in cutthroat business, and even political circles. James arrives at the client's high-rise apartment, but can't enter without a keycard. Forced to improvise, he buys a card duplicator online, then stalks the client to a gym, where he steals a janitor's master key to access lockers. He swipes the client's keycard, duplicates it, and returns it undetected. Inside the apartment, the client mistakes James for a robber, until realizing he's the hitman he hired. The client shifts blame to the lawyer, who allegedly suggested targeting James's wife for an extra $150K. Realizing the lawyer was the mastermind, and the client merely followed advice, James acknowledges his own failure triggered the chain of events. He spares the client, but delivers a chilling warning. If you ever think of coming after me, I'll kill you in ways you can't predict. The threat leaves the client too terrified to retaliate. Months later, James is seen making coffee for his recovered wife. His future, whether he'll remain a hitman or retire, is left ambiguous. Even by the story's end, his real name is unknown. James is just a placeholder. He's used countless aliases on credit cards and documents, making his true identity untraceable. The story ends.